everyone, and welcome back to the show. Being that I'm near my season finale, I'm doing a few special reviews. Today's special guest is Mizio. I met her through the That Guy with the Glasses forums, and she's decided to join me with a brief talk about a certain very classic sci-fi movie, to which I give you into her capable hands for our opening.
When you think of classic sci-fi movies, many may immediately come to mind. Star Wars, Aliens, Star Trek, even if that was really boring and I couldn't get through it, but that's beside the point. And, if you have good taste in movies, Blade Runner. Oh, Harrison Ford, you are a god among nerds. This is one of those movies where, even if you've only seen bits and pieces of it, you know it's cool anyway. The whole atmosphere boasts a style that few films have nowadays, giving it a unique edge that makes it memorable to this day. This is evident as early as the first few shots of the film, where we see a city landscape from above as flames dot the picture here and there, then with an eye reflecting this view. In a way, this film is a work of art, simply because of how it's presented.
Yes, and yet, at the time, this dark dystopian future is really not what people wanted to see. You see, at the same time that this movie came out, we had things like E.T., Star Trek, Rocky III, and not to mention a whole slew of other very popular science fiction movies at the time. Not many of them were quite as dark or as gritty, or even, for that matter, realistic as Blade Runner actually was. The movie did eventually make its money back, despite the fact that it bellied up in the theaters, by actually going to video. Back in 1982, when this came out, the direct-to-video market was just starting to come out. There are not many movies yet, but this was one of those movies that did come out fairly soon after its theatrical release, within about a year, I would say. And it actually got really big on being on tape, and that's how the audience really got a hold of this thing and were able to watch it and finessely detail all the interesting little things that this movie pulled off. That is actually probably where most of today's fans actually come from, not to mention the fact that I myself was born in 1985, so I was not even born yet when this movie was made and come out. So I am technically a part of that video market, and I own at least 2 different copies of Blade Runner now. I actually own the director's cut, which is over yonder, and my prize.
There are obviously other things that go into Blade Runner to make it so great, though, such as the characters. This is one of those special movies where even when the main antagonists die, you feel some sadness because everyone is fleshed out so well, even the villains. I mean, there's emotional depth to everyone, whether it's Deckard, Roy, Rachel, or even J.F. Sebastian. Replicants aren't exactly good. They kill innocents, cause mayhem on occasion. Okay, maybe they're actually kind of bad, but it still doesn't keep you from understanding their plight and not always wanting them to die. Call me a sucker for misunderstood characters. No one can forget Roy's memorable part near the end, and his tears and rain speech right after he saves Deckard. An act he certainly doesn't need to commit, by the way, which makes you feel even more for his character. In these few moments, Roy displays more depth and emotion than a lot of other movie characters nowadays do in entire films. As a side note, most of that speech was actually ad-libbed. Isn't that just the most awesome thing?
As a matter of fact, that's such a powerful scene. Let's watch it right now.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched C-beams glitter in the dark near the 10-Hauser Gate. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to die.
Yes, very deep. After the first half, the first quarter of the second half was created by the actor right there when they were rehearsing it in one of their rehearsal rooms. And then the actual last quarter of that whole thing, the whole actual Tears in the Rain, if I'm not mistaken, actually came out of what happened on set because they weren't quite sure how he should really end it. I mean, the already previously written out part as well as what the actor came up with were pretty good, but they didn't come to a final decision until he actually came up with the really good final line on set. And it's also too true that cinema today, most of the people that we are left to root for as our heroes or as our villains are usually nothing more than useless jerks that have no pity or remorse or redeeming factors to them whatsoever. Matter of fact, if this movie was to be remade, that entire line would probably be gone, and there wouldn't be one thing to make us like Deckard nor the replicants. Ergo, this entire movie would suck. Guarantee you, if they ever tried it, it would royally bite the big one, because just no. People these days can't seem to even write a character properly anymore. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if most of the character development that they actually spent on during this movie would be instantly replaced with more needless action and pointless gore. That seems to be the way of Hollywood these days. Just look at Clash of the Titans.
Blade Runner also manages to work in a romance subplot that's actually very bearable, even if sometimes it feels just the tiniest bit forced. The dialogue also gets a little bit corny sometimes too, but it never gets to the point where it's totally cringeworthy.
Yes, thankfully, even though the producers themselves did not know when to stop pushing something too far, luckily the filmmakers as well as the editors were of clear, sound mind and decided this is how far it's going to go. The producers actually wanted a fairly physical scene between the two of them, and it was actually filmed. Thankfully, none of the 3 versions of the film ever have that scene, and the only reason why I know it exists is because during the making of documentary, they actually do show the clip where she gets topless. They actually make Rachel go topless, and it's her and Deckard kind of grinding like up against one of his windows. It's like, no, that doesn't work at all. It's not even sexy. No, it's pretty ridiculous and just does not work. But what they do have in store for us with this film was actually pretty well done, although still kind of felt keyed in. But they actually did do it slowly and appropriately, and she does decide to stay at his apartment because she's being searched for, I assume.
The story itself of Blade Runner also manages to be fantastic, featuring a futuristic, future that's more technologically advanced than ours right now, but still has many traces of the way we live currently. The whole idea of the film is pretty original, with a story that's detailed enough that if I tried to say it all right now, it would practically be a carbon copy of the opening crawl. So, as I've said, watch it for yourself, and things like the setting just serve to amplify the awesome. After all, you don't get many films about how it rains so much the people of the earth band together to prevent eventual drownings. Wait. If you're going into Blade Runner expecting an exact replica, get it? Replica? Replicant? Ha! I cracked myself up. I'll be here all week. Of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, however, you're soon gonna be pretty disappointed. The movie is really nothing like the original novel, only adapting the story in the loosest sense of the word. Heck, pretty much the entire plot about the animals is cut, with only a few references like the owl and snake that almost make you confused, since they give no context whatsoever as to why these things would be fake. Still though, even if it's hugely different from the book, with how well it turned out, I would almost speak blasphemy by saying I enjoyed the movie more than I enjoyed the novel.
While it is true that the destruction of all animal life was a bigger part played in both the original story as well as the early scripts, it was, however, not the main focus of either. The main focus still was what is human and how human is humanity. To that, we get interesting different bits throughout the movie as well as the book, and they do play it pretty straightforward on that. The original writer of Androids, Philip K. Dick, did have final say on whether or not the films of his books got made. Not only was he happy with the final script that they handed him, but his children to this date that are head of his estate are also still very pleased with how the film turned out. As it was, there was definitely not the ability to actually make the entire book into the script of a movie and then make the entire movie out of the entire book into a movie. However, nowadays I would assume it's a lot more easier to try and pull off than it was back then.
As I said before, when you think of classic sci-fi movies, Blade Runner should always come to mind. If it doesn't, well, I'm not associating with you until further notice. That's all there is to it. The characters are fantastic, the acting is superb, but it stars Harrison Ford, so are we really surprised? The story stands out, and the style is still unmatched. You can't call yourself a true sci-fi fan if you haven't seen Blade Runner.
Okay, thanks, Mizio, and I'll see you all later. Now then, let's... Ah! Ah! Yeah, my head! What was that even saying? Weird. Catch y'all later.
It's telling us, look where we're headed. Look what we can do to each other. Don't be a replicant. Don't be someone who just follows orders and shoots women in the back. Be someone who has a monitor on your own empathic pulse. Be human, which was the whole point of Philip K. Dick's career. And that was a pretty heady message, particularly at a time when there was an emphasis on the material. And Blade Runner ultimately is about the spiritual.
Time is the essence of what makes for something great or classic.
I mean, we're in a movie business where most movies are disposable commodities. They're the summer blockbuster. I'm not going to name what they are, but they come and go in weeks. And bye-bye. Nobody wants to resurrect them. Nobody wants to see them again. So the ones that are really, truly well-made, the kind of Casablancas of science fiction, survive and get seen over and over.
The intensity of his perfectionism on this movie made the movie. This is a master at his best.
I was absolutely about coordinating beauty. It was shot by shot, had to be great. What I'm expecting from you will be very high. You're not going to be wasted. I've chosen you because I know you're really good at what you do, and I'm going to actually push you like crazy. I'm going to get the best.